Okay, grief and bereavement therapy course intro. So here's my contact information. This is also on your syllabus. And all throughout the information on Blackboard and the emails that I send you and all that. The best way to reach me if you need a quicker answer is to text me. Because if I am in with a client, you know, and you call me, it'll go to voicemail, and I'm not sure when I'll pick that up, but you can leave me a voicemail or an email, but send me a text and say, you know, Professor, I sent you this, please take a look at it as soon as you can. Or, you know, you can just, you know, text me and tell me what you need to tell me. I will be having office hours on Zoom every Thursday night from 6 to 7. And you use the same Zoom link that you used to sign on tonight. Everything that we do throughout this course will be that Zoom link. So bookmark that somewhere for future use. But I will have office hours every Thursday from 6 to 7. But if that's not a good time or you need to talk to me, just let me know and we can set something else up, or we can do a Zoom or just a phone call or whatever you need. So here's a little bit about me. I provide psychotherapy to nursing home residents. I also have a private practice, which is part virtual, part in person. I have, prior to all of that and sort of concurrently, I was a hospice social worker and a healthcare administrator in hospice for about 20 years. And then I'm also an LCSW clinical supervisor. And like many, if not most of you, I'm also a griever. I've had many losses in my life, including both of my parents, a niece at the age of 21, some friends. And so, you know, I have experienced the grief practice, the grief experience as well. So when you're thinking about, you know, coming to this class and taking this class and maybe talking to your friends, you're like, oh, I'm taking this class on grief and bereavement. And I can imagine that you had some feelings of like, oh, you know, it might be a difficult topic and it might be really heavy, which is the case. So you might be having feelings of, you know, of sadness. You're going to be talking about a lot of sad things, learning about sad things and a lot of pain. But you'll also see that you and your clients and people in general are pretty resilient. And when we allow ourselves to access that resilience, or sometimes if we can assist others in accessing those resilience in working through of working through your grief, that we don't talk about getting over something or putting something behind us. We talk about that we are working through that, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means when you get into the materials of the course. And that grief and loss can be a real opportunity for growth in our lives, and ultimately give us hope for our future. So all of those things, all of those many different faceted things you're going to find in doing this course and in exploring grief and your own reactions and those of others, and ultimately lead to, hopefully, is my goal for this course and for your lives, is an ongoing sense of self-discovery.
Nice.
So here's our text, Grief Counseling and Grief Therapy, 5th edition. It is available on, you know, from the bookstore. It's available on Amazon. You can rent it, you can buy it. It's not a real expensive one. You can get it on a Kindle edition, which is a little cheaper. It's a little bit dated. I've been frantically searching to make sure, because this is from 2016, and Dr. Worden really needs to come out with a 6th edition, given all the changes that we've seen in the DSM-5 and the DSM-5 TR, and just things that we're learning about grief theory. But this is the basic textbook that we'll use, and then there'll be other supplemental materials that are all going to be available on or through your Blackboard course area there. So this is the only thing that costs money. We'll be watching this film called Rebirth, and it's on Academic Video Online. Again, the link to Academic Video Online is in your syllabus as well as in the course materials. And you just follow that link. You'll have to sign in with your Cougar One account. If you don't have a Cougar One, or you don't, you have trouble with that, you can rent it from all of the outlets. Prime, I think you can rent it from well, all of them, Google and all the rest of them for like just $4 or $5, but you can get it free on Academic Video Online. This movie follows 7 people who lost loved ones in New York on 9/11, with the exception of one lady who was actually in the towers and had severe burns. So it follows their grief process for, I think, a period of 6 or 7 years. And it's really interesting to see sort of the application of some of the concepts that we're learning in class in the real world. So that is one of the course materials. The second video is called Embracing Aging. That is available for free on YouTube, and it sort of goes over a lot of the changes that and the grief experiences that are involved in the aging process. So there's a link in the syllabus and in the course materials again for this, and that is available free on YouTube. Additional readings are also available on Blackboard, and there's going to be some podcasts, some short, some long, that are also on Blackboard. And I try to indicate whether something is just a bonus material that you might find interesting, or something that's actually going to be on the quizzes, and I'll talk about the quizzes in a minute. But all of the links are right there on Blackboard, and I tested them, and as of a couple of weeks ago they worked. But if you have a problem, please let me know right away if there's a broken link or something, and I'll fix it. We will have a couple of guest lectures. One is already recorded and one is going to be live. Marion Mencken, who is from Bo's Place, she's one of the directors at Bo's Place, and she is on a video talking to us a little bit about Bo's Place, also about grieving children and the developmental stages of that. And so that will be in a few weeks. And then Mary Davis, LCSW from Heritage Hospice, will be in a live class with us, and she'll be talking about her life as a hospice social worker. So I invite you to come to that live if you can, and ask questions, because she's going to talk about what she does, but then she's also going to be available to answer your questions, and even things like how much money should I expect to make, or how did you get into this, or why did you get into this, and what are you can ask her for advice and stuff. She has a family, and so she's been through it all career wise, and can probably give you some pretty good advice. So use that time not only to learn about grief and bereavement, but to talk to somebody who does the work, and find out what it's really like for them. Okay, so brass tacks, what's the grading situation? So here's the break. So class participation, 15%. And I'll break that down a little bit, but basically participation is, since we don't have required, you don't get a bonus or penalized, if you do or don't attend these in-person meetings. So participation is basically your Blackboard posts, your responses to other people's Blackboard posts, and then your response to the group presentations of other people, other classmates. So that's participation is 15%. There's a case studies worksheet in your materials, and so that's going to be 5%. There's a grief and loss timeline reflection paper, that's 15%. A group project presentation is 35%, and I will break these things down. And then 2 quizzes on the readings and lectures and all of the materials involved in the course, and that's 30% of your grade. So participation. So there are 3 posted Blackboard discussion prompts. So you are expected to respond thoughtfully to each one of those, and also engage with your classmate in terms of their response to their posts. I also have opened an open thread. So if there's something that you wanted to talk about, or something interesting that you found in your travels or readings or anything that you wanted to, oh hey, read this article, it's really interesting, there's a place for you to post in that open thread. So that's the first part, is respond to the 3 prompts, respond to your classmates posts, and anything else that you wanted to post there. And then the second part of that is that we're going to have group presentations, and usually there's around 10 of them. And so you will be responsible for viewing 6 other group presentations in addition to the one that you are involved in. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. So, of course, comments on the discussion board are meant to be an extension of your class experience. So to get credit, your comments should be relevant to the topics that are raised, provide new information or insights, ask probing and thoughtful questions, and of course must be respectful. So the case studies worksheet is 5%. And that's due in week 3. And you'll see I think there's 5 case studies. Yes. So you choose one of those, just one. And then you respond to the questions on the worksheet that is in your course materials. And then you submit that through the assignments section. So don't do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, because you won't get extra credit for that, because I'm only going to grade 1. Okay, so pick the one that's most interesting to you, or that you find the easiest to analyze, or whatever, and respond to that worksheet and submit it at the end of week 3. So the grief and loss timeline reflection paper is, the purpose is to get you thinking about the losses in your own life. And just like everything else that you've learned in your coursework here, is that when you start meeting with clients, all your stuff is going to come flooding in. And so you need to be prepared for that. And you need to know what your stuff is. So this is not a paper that goes real deep, but it's possible that it can bring stuff up for you, but it is, it's just 1 to 2 pages. And basically what I'm asking you to do is do a timeline of the losses in your life. And it can be death losses, can be other, whatever losses you find were significant. Moves, relationships, you know, a lot of people had a lot of losses through COVID. Some were death losses and some were, you know, experience losses. You know, your graduate experience is different than you thought it would be, or your, you know, you had a job loss, perhaps, things like that. So whatever that looks like, just do a timeline of those losses. And so that's the picture. So you do the picture, you put down the losses, and for instance, if it's a death loss, it might look like, you know, for instance, March 2014, Bob Rogers' father. So you list what that person, who that person was, what their name is, when the loss was, and what their relationship to you was. And then that's your timeline. And then you respond to the questions that are in the syllabus and in your course materials, which is in 1 to 2 pages, which does not include the timeline. So you've got the timeline, and then your response is 1 to 2 pages, type double spaced. You don't need a cover page or references or anything. And the questions are not asking you about the loss itself or how you feel about the loss itself. The questions are asking about the experience of making the timeline. So the questions are like, what, you know, what came up for you when you were putting this together? Was it a hard situation? You know, what things did you notice about yourself and about what you were feeling, about what the experience of doing the timeline, not what you were feeling when you were contemplating those losses, what each loss was, but what the experience of making the timeline was. So because the other real purpose of this is to give you a tool to use with your clients, to help them to open up and to realize, you know, to talk about their losses. I use this sometimes in groups as an icebreaker. People will do their timeline, and then they'll do a presentation. You know, everybody will say, this is my timeline and these are my losses. And it's interesting what comes up, what stories come up, what feelings come up. And it kind of makes it easier for people to talk about. So, but that's that paper. The grading, it's a personal experience. I'm not going to grade your personal experience. If you have engaged in the topic, you'll get full points for that. I've never had anybody get less than full points. There might be a couple times where people have handed something in and I've said, I think you really need to engage a little bit more in this, and I give them a second chance to come back with something more meaningful. But by and large, you know, everybody gets 15 points on that. So, okay, now the group project. So the purpose of the group project is for you to see how grief and bereavement issues surface in different practice settings. So what you would do is select an agency, set up an interview. You can do a phone or Zoom or in person, whatever works best for you, and then present your findings to the class. And this is wrong. So this was from a long time ago. Oh no, it's right. I'm sorry. It is. It's right. I used to have to also have what do you call it? You had to hand in interview questions, but you don't have to do that anymore. So the intervention guidelines are 10% of the grade. The class presentation, it's 20% of the grade. And then the self-grading portion is 5%. So by Sunday, I would ask each one of you to find somebody else that you would like to work with in the class And it's good that you are mostly in-person class people so that hopefully you know each other a little bit more. And form a group of between 2 and 4 people. And then select some agencies that you would like to interview, a first, second, and third choice. A lot of people choose where they're doing their internship. That's fine. Some people choose something that, you know, they've always wanted to learn about. And, you know, because now we are so virtual, I've had people, you know, contact organizations in other states. I had one person that contacted an organization in the UK. So because you can contact them by Zoom or by phone, I would like some sort of personal contact rather than an email. But if you can identify a first, second, and third choice, or you can just say, hey, assign us to somebody, and then ask any questions there, and then submit that worksheet through the assignments section there. So, and I asked for first, second, and third choice because I don't want, you know, to be like 3 of the same agency or 3 of the same type of agency. And if you choose something that has a lot of different components, say like, you know, Methodist Hospital, if you can identify what part of Methodist Hospital, is it like the stroke clinic or the oncology wing, or, you know, the children's unit, or, you know, different, if you can be specific on those, or Catholic Charities or Jewish Community Center, all of those do myriad things. If you can narrow it down, that's going to help you not end up with, you know, an unwieldy kind of presentation, and also help you to identify, you know, more specifics in your interviews and in your learning. And 2 people can choose Methodist Hospital and have different, you know, different areas that they're going to address. So identify, be as specific as you can on it, and get that to me by Sunday night. So I strongly suggest you do, before you have your interview, you posit at least 5 questions to get you started about these topics: the population that's served, the background of the staff, and the grief and loss issues faced by their clients and their staff, and how they address those issues. And be prepared, because some organizations are going to say, you know what, I don't think we really have grief and loss issues. And they all do, they just don't call it that, you know. And so, you know, be prepared to kind of push back on that. Maybe not, you know, just give some suggestions like, well, you know, for instance, we had a group that did interviewed an organization that helps people who have come out of prison after an extended period of time. And so, yeah, they could identify that some of their group participants had lost loved ones to death while they were in prison. But there's also other losses, you know, they don't know anything about technology. A lot of that stuff has passed them by, or, you know, they have, you know, missed out on having a career or having relationships broken, you know, things like that. So, you know, be prepared to think about, you know, things in a grief in a more expansive way, and try to identify some professional citations, read a little bit about the population and about the perhaps the grief and loss issues, but certainly about the struggles or the challenges of those populations. So the class presentation will be 20% of that whole grade, and it'll be a Zoom session the last week of class. I've already posted a link that you can go in and sign up for a time slot, and I've tried to give morning, afternoon, and evening slots. So what you will do is present to me during that time. So your presentation will be just these 5 elements, talking about the practice setting and the population, a discussion of the grief issues, a review of the literature relating to the population and the grief issues, a discussion of suggested interventions, and a conclusion with implications for social work practice. And those 5 items are going to be the elements of the grade that you'll receive. The intervention guidelines are 10% of your grade, and they're due at the time of the presentation. There is an example of this, as well as an example of all of the elements of this I'm talking about in a section of Blackboard called Presentation Guidelines. Presentation materials, resources. So you can go in there, see what other people's intervention guidelines look like, what a presentation looks like, and all of that. But the purpose of the intervention guidelines is to provide your fellow students, your colleagues, with a tool that they can use if they are out in their practice area and they encounter someone from that population who is experiencing grief and loss issues. So it's one page, single spaced. You have a paragraph that describes the population and the grief and loss issues, and then bullet points with suggested interventions, and then at least 4 professional citations, 4 references, journals or websites and things like that, and to use APA language, APA guidelines when you're making those citations. So it's just one page, single spaced. It's a resource, and you post that on Blackboard so that everybody can download it and use it. So that's 10% of the grade. And then there'll be 5% of that grade, each member. And so for the presentation and the intervention guidelines, each group, every group member gets the same grade. The self-grade sheet, every member will grade themselves and their colleagues, their teammates in 3 different areas. And I will drop the highest and the lowest score for each person and average the rest. And that's your self-grade. So
you can do it if you want.
So that's the grief presentation. Now, at the end of week 3, I have I put together a sign up Google Docs. There's also a link to that already on your materials, and you'll sign up. Your group will sign up for a 15-minute check-in or 10-minute check-in, just to see how you're doing, see if you've had any roadblocks in getting started. Because you think, well, we've got 6 or 7 weeks to put this all together. It goes very quickly. And so I tried to identify any kind of issues you have as soon as possible. So like, for instance, maybe you're having trouble getting in touch with someone in the organization. I had a group that identified an organization that really looked appealing to them, and they kept trying and trying, and it was like the 5th week, and they still hadn't received any response from anybody. And by that point, it's really a struggle, because I had to assign them a new agency because we found out that agency had folded. So I try to identify at least that you've had an initial contact, and then if you have any questions and what your timeline is for going forward. I don't expect you to have gotten very far, but I expect you to have reached out to someone in the organization and done some preliminary research, because maybe some of the questions you have are, we haven't been able to find anything about this population. Can you help? So anyway, there's a sign up for that as well. So once the once the groups are assigned, and that will happen, by Monday or Tuesday of by the 22nd or the 23rd is when it's due. The 24th or the 25th, I will assign all the groups, so you'll know, where you're going. And with the groups too, if you don't know anybody and you want me to randomly assign someone, I can do that as well. So, but the group presentation check-in will happen during that week 3. I know this was a lot of information on this group presentation. Does anybody have any questions before I go forward? Okay. I'm either very informative or you are very tired, or both. Okay, so the last part of your grade are the quizzes on the readings. It's the readings, all the course materials, all the Blackboard stuff. It's 30 questions plus 2 extra credit questions for each one. And there'll be multiple choice or true and false. You take it on Blackboard. Quiz 1 will be available the end of this week, or by Sunday night, and it'll stay open until November 6th at 11:59. So that's Sunday night, November 6th. And you'll have, once you start it, you have to finish it. You have 4 hours to finish it, unless you have asked for an accommodation or something like that. But you can take it at any time during that period of that 3-week period there between October 23rd and November 6th. So once you're, if you want to work ahead and get through quickly, you can do that. It's open book, open notes, open Blackboard, open, everything. So the only thing that you certify when you take the exam and press submit is that it is only your work. So you can't sit with a group of your friends and say, okay, what did you get for this one? And collaborate. This one is the only thing that you can't do is collaborate. This is your work. So quiz 1 is available the 23rd to the 6th. Quiz 2 is available the 7th to December 4th. And quiz 1 will cover everything from tonight until the end of that week of November 6th. And then quiz 2 will cover everything from November 7th through that day, December 4th, as they are listed on your course schedule. So all the materials in those are fair game up until the day that the quiz is due. Okay. And both of them have 2 extra credit questions.
My little bean. It's my little bean, and her name is Bean McQueen.
Can you mute if you're not muted, please? So the one thing I wanted to say about this course is that, I'm not a hard grader. And some of you may have heard, oh, take this course, it's an easy grade. And especially with the new grading rubric, I'm not going to tell you it's going to be hard to get a good grade in this course. In terms of, me being, how I grade you. But I will say that grade is still going to be hard won because it's a lot of emotional work. And there's a lot of things that'll come up. So potentially it's not such an easy A. It's not such an easy good grade from that perspective. Academically, I'm not a rigorous grader, but it's not going to be an easy walk in the park. If you really engage in the material, it's going to be some difficult days. And so I want you to be prepared for that, and also know that you can reach out to me if there's things that come up or things that you need to process. Don't be shy, and just, talk to me about those things. But the first part of the course is going to be heavy on theory of the history, heavy on theory and history of grief therapy, which I find is very fascinating, but you may have the reaction of this gentleman here. But then throughout, we're going to see how that applies to social work practice and how you will see that grief and bereavement and grief and loss issues are going to come up in myriad ways, whatever you decide to do, whether you're a micro or macro practice, whether you do something completely different from social work, you're still going to, you know, in every kind of work situation, you're going to encounter these. So I think you'll learn skills that will serve you well no matter what you do.